Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random Star Trek episode. So today's episode is from Deep Space Nine, uh, Season 1, Episode 15, called Progress. So on the station, we have Jake and Nog playing cards, and Quark is upset about some sort of Cardassian, they call it Yak Muck or something. Um, it's a Cardassian delicacy that's on the station that's not selling, and he's yelling at one of his subordinates to never bring it on board again. And Nog sort of has this idea of selling it to the Cardassians so that he can get some latinum. Then we get a stations log from Cisco where they are preparing to do an energy transfer on one of the Bajoran moons to transfer the energy core from that moon to Bajor. And then we get a runabout where Dax and Kira are surveying this moon and doing scans. And um, Dax tells a story about how the other day Morn had asked her to dinner, and she thinks that Morn's hair is kind of cute. And then they get a notification that there's people still on the moon who should have been evacuated already by the Bajoran government. So Kira beams down to the planet and beams in what looks to be like a farm. And there are two Bajorans there who have like these pitchforks pointed at Kira. And that's the teaser. So then we see this cottage where an old man walks out and says that they don't like uniforms. And Kira is talking to the old man and says that she doesn't quite like them much either, but she's here on a job with a job to do, and asks if she can talk to them, or are they gonna lower their pitchforks, their weapons, so to speak. So they lower their weapons, and then he continues to talk. Then we get Nog and Jake, and they're talking to a cargo ship captain, and is trying to sell the Yamak sauce to the Cardassians, and they convince the guy to, their initial offer is they want 5 bars of gold plating latinum in exchange for the Yamak and Yamak sauce. And the guy says that he doesn't have latinum but is willing to trade. And Jake butts in and says, "What are you willing to trade?" And Nog's upset about this because he just wants latinum. And he says that he will trade them a shipment of self sealing stem bolts. So if you watch Deep Space Nine, this is the introduction of the self sealing stem bolt, which uh, becomes a running joke throughout the show. And I'll talk about it at the end. So Jake convinces Nog to accept the trade. And then back on the moon, the old man is making dinner for Kira after he had been arguing with her, trying to get her to go away. He finally invites her in and tells her, well, he has some sort of root that needs to cook for like a few hours before it's soft enough to eat. And so basically she's going to be staying for a while. So she tells Dax to go ahead and leave, that she'll contact somebody later on when she's ready to come back. And then the other Bajorans that are there, they don't talk because they suffered through so much trauma with the Cardassians. And so it's just the old man and Kira. They're talking about just talking, and he's trying to basically goad her. He tells her that she's pretty, but then the way she walks is weird, and he's trying to get her to go away still, and trying to goad her, trying to piss her off, basically. And she continues to try to convince him to leave because she says that they're tapping the core of the moon in 7 days. So 7 days is how much time they've got. And the Bajorans are trying to rebuild Bajor. And he says that he left Bajor because he escaped during the occupation, and this is his home, and he doesn't want to leave. He's basically refusing to leave. So then back on the station, Nog is talking to Quark about the Yamuk sauce, and Quark's just doesn't want anything to do with the Yamuk sauce and tells him to get rid of it. So they basically score their Yamuk sauce for free. And then back on the moon, Gerardo is the name of the moon. The old man is telling a story he's telling Kira how he started out, and how that when he escaped, he didn't have any farming equipment and was basically plowing by hand. And he sort of exaggerates his story a little bit, which she picks up on, but you can tell that she's starting to like this guy, even though he's kind of grumpy and stubborn and set in his ways. And then he asked her how she was able to survive, and she said it wasn't easy, and that she had to fight the whole time. But they were finally able to beat the Cardassians, and he asked how is he able to beat them, she able to beat them, and she says that she hung on like fanatics, to which he smiles and replies like, fanatics, yes, basically implying that that's what he's doing. And she talks to him outside as he's building like this fireplace, and she says that she sympathizes with him, but again, he, they don't have time, and he needs to go, and he says he's gonna stand, he's gonna stay there. He's not budging. So then back on the station, Nog is inspecting the self sealing stem bolts. Say that 3 times fast. And Jake's with him, and Chief O'Brien walks in and talks to Nog about um, how to pass on a message to Quark that he needs to stop bypassing the import rules for the station. Then they ask Chief what the self sealing stem bolts are for, and he doesn't know. And he basically has no knowledge, never seen one before, doesn't know what they're for. So then Nog remembers that there was a Bajoran guy who ordered them in the first place, but couldn't afford them or didn't have the latinum at the time. Wasn't he wanted them but didn't have the latinum. So they want to contact him to see what their use is. So then back on the moon, Kira returns to the station and tells the Bajoran minister about the old guy and the other 2 Bajorans. And they're in Sisko's office, and they're talking about other ways of extracting the core, and she brings up another way that they could do it, but then the minister says it would take too long. It would take a year to install that extraction device, and so Kira, the Bajoran minister, basically talks about removing them by force, which she likens to what the Cardassians would do. And even Sisko is kind of shocked by this. He's like saying that it's not like that. They basically make a good of the many outweighs the good of the few, or the one argument, which because these resources are going to benefit all of Bajor versus this one guy who's being stubborn and doesn't want to leave this moon, which apparently was uninhabited before he arrived there. But it is a M-class moon, I guess. So then Kira returns to the moon and with 2 military guys, and tells them to go get the 2 Bajorans that don't talk. Go there and take them to be transported to Bajor. So she tries to reason with the old man again, and he's still arguing with her. Wants her to go away, and he's refusing to leave. And then the military guys come back, and one of them's bleeding, and says that one of the Bajorans poked him with their pitchfork. And then the old man kind of goes after the one of the military guys, and he gets zapped. But he's not dead, thankfully. Kira calls for help for Bashir to come down and help. So then back on the station, they contact Nog and Jake contact the Bajoran guy who wants the self-sealing stem bolts. That's hard to say. Self-sealing stem bolts. God. They contact the guy, but he doesn't have any latinum, and proposes a trade. To which Jake he wants to trade for land. And Nog doesn't like the idea because it's just dirt to him. And Jake convinces Nog to take the deal because it's land and land is valuable. So then back on the moon, the old man is being treated by Bashir, and the other Bajorans that can't talk are evacuated to Bajor. And Dr. Bashir wants to take the old man back to the station, and so that he can heal properly. And Kira says that she'll stay behind and take care of him. Just give me the medicine and whatever treatment that you think he needs. And she takes off her uniform jacket and decides to watch over the old guy. So then Julian goes back to the station and is talking to Sisko, and says that she just refused to. She says the same thing. She took off her jacket and refused to leave, and just wanted to stay behind and take care of the old guy. And then Sisko is worried about how that would sound to the Bajoran minister. So he tells Bashir that he needs to make it sound like that he requested her to stay behind, and they need a few days to heal. And he says, well, that's not true. And Sisko tells him to make it true. So Bashir tells him what Sisko wants him to say. Which is kind of a funny moment. Then back on the moon, Kira is angry. She's frustrated with this whole situation, and he asks why she's angry, and she says that she doesn't know, and then starts to talk about how back on Bajor, in her family home, there was this big ugly tree that she didn't like, and no animals would go near it, and it was just a tree that had like really deep roots in the ground, and they couldn't, nothing else would grow around it. And then the old man says something about it was selfish, and she says yes, it was selfish. And then he asks if they cut it down, and she says, I don't know, and stares at him. And basically it's an analogy to him and how he's stubborn and selfish and doesn't want to leave. So then right around that moment, Sisko contacts Kira, and he says he's beaming down. So Sisko beams down, knocks on the door. The old man, or Kira starts to get it, and then the old man says, no, I'll get it. And he's clearly like starting to heal now, so he can get up and walk. Sisko says that he's concerned about his first officer and her job, and how her job is in danger because of what she's doing. So he says he wants to talk to her. So they talk outside, and Sisko tells her that, she's on the other side now. She's not a resistance fighter anymore. She's in a place of authority, and that she has to do her job. And Kira gives this look like she's about to cry. She doesn't want to do it. He says, I know it makes you feel uncomfortable, but it has to be done, and that he says when he first came on board that he wasn't so sure about her, but now he believes that Bajor needs. He says that Bajor needs you and I need you, and says that there's a runabout standing by. Then he beams back up, and the old man is then it's later on that night. The old man's like having nightmares, and she wakes up and comforts him and tells him that he's all right. Don't worry about anything. And then he like has like a fever or something because. And how do I know that? Because she takes a wet cloth and puts it on his forehead, which is what you do in TV and television and movies is you show, don't tell. Whereas New Trick would be like, oh, I have a fever. Can you grab that cloth and put it on my head? Because they think the audience is stupid. So then back on the station, Nog and Jake are playing cards. And again, Nog is pissed off because now he has dirt. To which Jake replies that it's land and that it's worth something. It's not just dirt. And then they overhear Odo talking to Quark about the Bajoran government needs this piece of land that's owned by 3 or 4 groups, and their group, Nog and Jake's group, is the holdout. So then Jake turns to Nog and says, "See, I told you it was worth something." So then, so he's asking if Quark has anything to do with it, and he says, "No, I don't know anything about this, but I'm gonna try to find out." And then Odo leaves, and as he's trying to find out, Nog comes up to him and tells him he has to tell him something very important. So then Quark realizes that it's Nog and Jake that own the land, and they say that they want 5 bars of latinum for it. And so they agree to sell the land. So Nog is finally happy. He finally gets his latinum that he's been trying to get the whole time. Then back on the moon, the old man has recovered. It's the next day, and Kira wakes up to see him outside, continuing to work on his fireplace that he's almost finished doing. And then Kira goes out there and talks to him, and again reminds him that she has a job to do. And as he places the last piece, he lights the fire, and she walks into his cottage and comes back out with his suit, his clothes, and his stuff. And he says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm doing my job, and it's over, but I still want to be your friend." And he says, "Well, if you're my friend, why don't you take your weapon there and point it at me?" And she says that she can't do that. So then she blasts the fireplace, and he says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm saving your life." And takes like the torch or whatever, the stick that he has, and because he says he's not leaving as long as that cottage is still standing. So then she sets the cottage on fire and burns it down. And the old man says that if he leaves, he'll die. And she says, "No, I won't let you." And then says two to beam up. And that's the end of the episode. And I gave this episode a 7.5 out of 10. although probably could go higher, maybe an 8, uh, because okay, it's very much Star Trekky in the sense that it explores the human condition. It's a very personal story to Kira and sort of her character growth and accepting her role as the major in the military, and her connection with the Federation and Starfleet, and her connection with Cisco, and how they started off antagonistic towards each other, but now they're growing. So there's character development there. Uh, this is almost like a day in the life of Kira. So just over the course of maybe a 2 or 3 day period, where she has to deal with this one stubborn old man, and and yes, it's kind of bad that the Bajoran government is basically trying to force removal. But again, they make an argument that it's for the better, for it's for the the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few of the one. It's better for all of Bajor, uh, and they had. There's even a question of some of the people that were evacuated. Did they give any resistance? And apparently they didn't, but maybe they saw the writing on the wall. Well, they're going to be forced out of there either way. So, and of course, the Federation and Starfleet can't really interfere with what's going on because they're not part of the Federation. So it sort of makes the Bajoran government look bad, but obviously not nearly as bad as the Cardassians, but bad nonetheless. And there are some moving moments. The the moment with Cisco and Kira, where they have that discussion of how it's uncomfortable to do your job. It's kind of like when you say you work with a coworker and you get along with that coworker, or maybe you're their boss or something, and then they do something wrong and you have to discipline them, or maybe you're a parent. I'm not a parent, but uh, you don't want to do this, but you have to do it in order to teach him a lesson. You're not really teaching this guy a lesson, but I think most people can understand the concept. That was a moving moment. The moments of her bonding with him, even though she knows that she has to remove him from this moon, and she knows that that he fled here uh, to escape the occupant, the Cardassians. So he's a fighter in his own right, because he built this farm from scratch with no farming equipment. So she's the you know she sympathizes with that. So very good writing on this episode. Uh, Season one of Deep Space Nine is kind of not the greatest in the world, to be honest. But this is a highlight that I would highly recommend. If you're not going to watch every episode, this would be one that I would say you should watch. Um, there's another episode that's very similar. I don't know where. I think it's in the second season where Kai Wynn tells Kira to remove this guy who's also being stubborn, and she knows the guy. And so it's a very similar plot, but then there ends up being an armed conflict, and there ends up being a point where both sides decide not to fight each other, and they give Kai Wynn like this ultimatum. I forget the whole circumstance. Something to do with uh, being the Kai, or something, some kind of election, or some kind of something. Kind of similar to the one that I did last week with the collaborator. Similar kind of situation where somebody had to step down, or change their vote or something in order to protect this other situation. So a lot of political intrigue in Deep Space Nine, which is great because it's in a Star Trek setting, so we can talk about, real world stuff without it being all, I hate the Democrats, or I hate the Republicans, or whatever. So then one little tidbit, as I said, a self-sealing stem bolt is, I had to look it up. Well, I wanted to look it up because I knew that it was a running gag throughout the show, because basically it's described as a useless item with unclear purpose, which becomes obvious throughout the running gag that they have on the show. So anyway, Michelle Ferry is here and says hello to me. I've had a great day, Michelle Ferry. I didn't have to work today. And says that a self-sealing stem bolt is quite a mouthful. Yes. Try saying it 3 times fast. So now we get to the portion of the show where fate will decide the next episode. So, again, yeah, progress does not come without a few issues, a few problems. You think about the building of America, and we could go into the forced removal of the Native Americans so that we could have progress. So here we are, still on. Nothing got messed up there, so we're still on the same episode. So we're going to hit the randomize again. And it's Enterprise, Season 2, Episode 11, Precious Cargo. And that one is Trip is carrying like this princess lady who's pretty hot, and they don't get along. And there's something else. There's something in the background going on. Don't remember. But I will be back on Wednesday to review that episode. Don't remember much about it. I just remember that chick, and that they didn't get along. I'll be back on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Red Hour. And I want to thank Michelle Ferry for coming out tonight. Anyone that's lurking, and anyone that watches this in the future, I'm the Dead Man. This is the Red Hour, and you are watching the show on the channel The Grateful Trek. I know it can be confusing, but I need it to stay that way. But because it's the Red Hour, and I introduce chaos on the Red Hour. Have a good night, everyone.